By 1959, horror was getting comfortable. Vampires had their castles, monsters had their formulas, and audiences knew exactly what to expect. Then William Castle wired theater seats with electric buzzers and told people to scream for their lives. The Tingler wasn't just a movie, it was an ambush. Castle turned cinemas into haunted houses, planted fake victims in the crowd, and convinced America that a spine-dwelling parasite would kill them if they didn't scream loud enough. Vincent Price starred as a scientist who trips on LSD and battles a rubber centipede while breaking the fourth wall to warn you, yes you, that the Tingler might be crawling up your back right now. It was absurd, it was genius, and it changed how horror could be experienced. These are 15 weird facts about the film that electrified audiences, horrified critics, and proved that the best scares happen when the screen can't contain them. Before we dive into the madness, if you're obsessed with the wild stunts and forgotten gimmicks that made classic horror unforgettable, smash that subscribe button and hype this video. It keeps the chaos alive and the creativity flowing. And stick around because William Castle didn't just make a movie, he made a carnival. Alright, let's get into it. Number 1. Castle literally electrified his audience. William Castle didn't want you to just watch the Tingler, he wanted you to feel it. So he invented Percepto, a system where select theater seats were rigged with military surplus airplane wing dicers that functioned as hidden buzzers. At key moments in the film, when the Tingler was supposedly loose in the theater, ushers would flip switches and send jolts of vibration through random seats. Audiences would leap, scream, and grab onto strangers. It was chaos. It was brilliant. Castle didn't just break the fourth wall, he electrified it. Decades before 4D cinema, motion seats, or interactive experiences, Castle turned a movie screening into a physical assault. The buzzers were crude, the effect was simple, but the terror was real. People believed something was crawling on them. Some theaters even had to tone down the voltage after complaints. But Castle didn't care about complaints. He cared about screams. Percepto turned the Tingler from a B-movie into an event, proving that horror doesn't have to stay on screen. Sometimes it needs to crawl into the seat beside you. Number 2. Planted victims made the terror feel real. To sell the illusion that the Tingler was real and loose, Castle hired actors to pose as regular moviegoers. Mid-film, at the exact moment the creature supposedly escaped, these plants would scream, convulse, and collapse. Ushers would rush down the aisles, shining flashlights and dragging the victims out on stretchers while the film continued playing. The real audience watched in horror. Was this part of the show? Was someone actually hurt? The confusion was the point. Castle understood that the scariest moment isn't what's on screen, it's when you can't tell where the movie ends and reality begins. Some theaters went even further, stationing nurses in lobbies and offering insurance policies against death by fright. It was pure theater, a magic trick performed in the dark. Critics called it cheap, audiences called it unforgettable, and decades later, filmmakers are still trying to recreate that moment when a crowd stops watching and starts believing. Number 3. Vincent Price experimented with LSD on screen. The Tingler was one of the first major American films to depict LSD use, years before the counterculture made it infamous. Price plays Dr. Warren Chapin, a scientist obsessed with fear, who doses himself to study the effects. The sequence is trippy, disturbing, and completely ahead of its time. The backstory makes it even wilder. Screenwriter Rob White actually volunteered for LSD experiments at UCLA to research the scene, then described his experience to Price. Rumors swirled for years that Price also took LSD to prepare for the role, giving an authentic performance of hallucination and terror. Price later dismissed the gossip with his signature charm, calling it colorful nonsense and joking that his only drug was a good script, but the sequence itself was revolutionary. In 1959, most Americans had never heard of LSD. Watching a respected actor portray a self-administered psychedelic trip was shocking, transgressive, and weirdly educational. Price's performance is genuinely unnerving, eyes wide, voice trembling, body contorting. Whether he researched it or just acted brilliantly, the scene remains one of cinema's earliest and strangest depictions of altered consciousness. Number 4. The blood was the only color in a black and white film. The Tingler is shot in black and white, except for one scene. When a deaf woman hallucinates in terror, she sees her bathroom sink fill with blood, and the blood is bright, vivid red. In 1959, this was revolutionary. Castle achieved it by painting the entire bathroom set in grayscale using only shades of gray and white, then filling the sink with colored liquid that would register as the sole source of color on screen. The effect was shocking. Audiences gasped. It felt wrong, unnatural, like the film itself was breaking. Today, it's a simple visual trick, but in 1959, when color films were still a luxury and black and white was the norm, seeing that single burst of crimson was visceral and unforgettable. It also served the story perfectly. The woman cannot scream, so her terror manifests visually, a silent scream made of blood. Castle knew that sometimes one splash of color is more powerful than a full Technicolor palette. That bathroom scene became iconic, proof that limitations can breed creativity. Number 5. Price called it genius nonsense. Vincent Price adored working with William Castle, even though he knew the Tingler's premise was absurd. A fear parasite living in your spine that can only be killed by screaming? Price understood that Castle wasn't making high art, he was making high-concept entertainment, and Price, ever the showman, threw himself into the role with total commitment. His performance is simultaneously serious and winking, playing Dr. Chapin as a genuine scientist while acknowledging the delicious ridiculousness of the premise. Price had the rare gift of elevating schlock into something memorable. He could deliver the most outlandish dialogue with such conviction that you believed him, even when your brain knew better. His chemistry with Castle was perfect. Two entertainers who understood that horror doesn't have to be grim to be effective. It can be fun, playful, and absurd as long as it takes itself just seriously enough. Price's willingness to embrace the film's wild concept made him the perfect star for Castle's Carnival of Fear. Number 6. The spine science was twisted but rooted in reality. William Castle based the Tingler on a kernel of real science, then twisted it into something wonderfully absurd. In the 1950s, psychologists were studying the physical manifestations of fear: increased heart rate, adrenaline surges, muscle tension. Castle took that research and asked, what if fear was a tangible thing? What if terror could manifest as a physical creature growing on your spine? The idea that extreme fright could produce a parasite was pure fiction, but it was grounded just enough in contemporary psychology to feel plausible. Castle was fascinated by the body's fear response, the way terror makes you want to scream, the release that vocalization provides. He built an entire mythology around it. The Tingler grows when you're afraid, feeding on unexpressed terror, and only a scream can weaken it. It's ridiculous, but it's also strangely logical within its own universe. That's what made the Tingler work. Castle took real science, added a monster, and sold it with absolute conviction. Number 7. A silent woman's screamless death. Actress Judith Evelyn plays one of cinema's most tragic victims, a deaf woman who cannot speak and therefore cannot scream. The Tingler's mythology states that screaming is the only defense against the creature. For someone who cannot vocalize fear, there is no escape. Evelyn's performance is haunting. She conveys pure terror through expression alone, eyes wide, mouth opening in silent anguish, body convulsing. The scenes of her hallucinating in terror, surrounded by horror she cannot cry out against, are genuinely disturbing. Her death is the film's emotional core, a moment where Castle's gimmickry gives way to something darker. It's a reminder that for all the buzzers and planted actors in carnival atmosphere, the Tingler is ultimately about helplessness, about the fundamental human need to scream when confronted with the unbearable. Evelyn's character can't, and it kills her. That silent death scene, more than any electrical gimmick, is what lingers. Sometimes the quietest moments are the loudest. Number 8. The creature was rubber wire and pure nightmare fuel. The Tingler itself, the spine-dwelling parasite that feeds on fear, was a practical effect made from molded rubber wire armatures and puppet strings. Designed to resemble a grotesque fusion of human vertebrae and a centipede, the creature twitched, writhed, and scuttled with deeply unnerving movements. The puppeteers used simple techniques, pulling strings off camera, manipulating the rubber body by hand, and using forced perspective to make it look larger. It wasn't sophisticated, but it worked. The Tingler looked organic, alien, and disturbingly plausible. Its segmented body, claw-like appendages, and jerky motion gave it a life that felt wrong. Today, it looks charmingly retro, a relic of practical effects and B-movie ingenuity. But in 1959, projected large on a dark screen while buzzers jolted your seat, that rubber monstrosity was genuinely frightening. Castle proved you didn't need big budgets or cutting-edge technology. You just needed imagination, rubber, and the willingness to make something that looked like it crawled out of a nightmare. Number 9. Castle staged full-scale theater takeovers. William Castle didn't just screen the Tingler, he staged it. The film would break mid-screening, the projector stopping as if something had gone wrong. The screen would go completely black. Then Vincent Price's voice would boom through the speakers warning that the Tingler had escaped into the theater and was among the audience. Lights would flicker on and off. Ushers, coached beforehand, would run through aisles with flashlights, shouting at the audience to scream, pretending to search for the creature under seats. The buzzer seats would activate. Chaos would erupt. It was pure showmanship. P.T. Barnum meets horror cinema. Castle understood that in 1959, with television keeping people home, theaters needed to offer something TV couldn't. He made moviegoing an event, a communal experience that couldn't be replicated. You didn't just watch the Tingler, you survived it. That theatrical magic, that blend of performance and panic, made Castle's films unforgettable. Critics dismissed him as a gimmick peddler, but audiences knew better. Castle was selling something more valuable than a movie. He was selling an experience. Number 10. He warned you directly and made you doubt yourself. At the film's climax, Vincent Price breaks the fourth wall completely. He looks directly into the camera and addresses you, the viewer, with a chilling warning. Ladies and gentlemen, just a word of warning. If any of you are not convinced that you have a Tingler of your own, The next time you're frightened in the dark, don't scream. It's a brilliant meta moment that extends the film's terror beyond the runtime. Castle didn't want the fear to end when the lights came up. He wanted you walking out of the theater wondering if maybe, just maybe, the Tingler was real. That direct address made every viewer complicit, turning a campy B-movie into something uncomfortably personal. You weren't watching someone else's story anymore. You were being warned about your own spine. It's a technique that modern horror rarely attempts. Direct audience address that acknowledges the artifice while somehow deepening the unease. Price's delivery is perfect. Calm, authoritative, almost fatherly. He's not shouting. He's just reminding you. And that makes it so much worse. Number 11. The theater instruction turned audiences into performers. Before every showing, Castle had theater staff play a recorded announcement instructing moviegoers that screaming was the only way to survive the Tingler. The message was clear. If you felt it attacking, you had to scream for your life. The louder you screamed, the weaker it became. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a social contract. Castle made silence deadly. If you sat there quietly during the attack sequence, you weren't just watching horror, you were failing to survive it. Teenagers shrieked, adults hollered, entire theaters became echo chambers of manufactured panic, and it worked. The brilliance was that Castle weaponized peer pressure. Once a few people started screaming, everyone else felt permission or obligation to join in. Word spread that the Tingler was different, that something insane was happening in those cinemas. Castle understood something fundamental. Fear is participatory. And if you can make the audience believe their screams matter, they'll scream until their throats burn. Number 12. Critics despised it. Audiences made it a hit. Film critics in 1959 savaged the Tingler. They called it a gimmick, a publicity stunt masquerading as cinema, a cheap carnival trick. They weren't entirely wrong, but they missed the point. Audiences didn't care about critical approval. They cared about having the time of their lives. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. People told their friends about the buzzers, the screaming, the chaos, the feeling of being inside something bigger than a movie. Box office receipts soared. The Tingler became one of the year's most profitable independent films, proving that Castle's showmanship worked better than any marketing campaign money could buy. It was a pure populist triumph. Critics hated it, audiences loved it, and Castle laughed all the way to the bank. The divide also revealed something important about horror. It doesn't need prestige, it needs to work. And the Tingler worked. It terrified, thrilled, and entertained. Sometimes the best art is the art that doesn't care about being called art. Number 13. It invented modern immersive horror. Decades before 4D theaters, haunted house attractions, or interactive horror experiences, William Castle was already there. The Tingler pioneered the concept that fear could be a physical, participatory event. Every innovation that followed, rumbling seats, water sprays, themed screenings, escape rooms, immersive theater, owes a debt to Castle's vision. He understood that breaking the barrier between audience and experience created a deeper, more memorable form of entertainment. Today's horror fans attend midnight screenings where actors roam the aisles, theaters that sync motion seats to jump scares, and haunted attractions that blur performance and reality. Castle invented that playbook. He proved that audiences would pay extra, travel farther, and endure discomfort for the promise of something genuinely different. The Tingler's legacy isn't just the film itself, it's the idea that horror is best when it refuses to stay contained. Number 14. Castle made horror fun instead of just frightening. What set William Castle apart wasn't just his gimmicks, it was his philosophy. He understood that fear and fun weren't opposites, they were partners. The Tingler proved you could terrify audiences while making them laugh, scream while making them smile. It was a roller coaster, not a trauma. Castle rejected the idea that horror had to be grim, serious, or artistically pretentious. He embraced the carnival, the spectacle, the shared experience of being scared together. That approach influenced generations of filmmakers who realized horror works best as entertainment, not punishment. From Joe Dante to Sam Raimi to James Wan, directors who blend scares with humor and showmanship owe Castle a debt. The Tingler wasn't trying to disturb your soul, it was trying to give you the best night at the movies you'd ever had. And for millions of screaming, buzzing, laughing audience members, it succeeded. Number 15. A legacy of screams that never stopped. The Tingler was often mocked, dismissed as camp, written off as exploitation, but it became a cult classic because it understood something profound. Horror is a communal art form. Castle didn't make films to watch alone in silence, he made them to experience together, loudly, chaotically, joyfully. His legacy isn't just the Tingler, it's every horror film that dares to be playful, every screening event that promises more than sitting in the dark. Castle taught generations that if you let yourself scream, if you surrender to the spectacle and the pure joy of being scared, horror becomes transcendent, not in spite of the gimmicks, Because of them, the Tingler arrived when horror needed a jolt, literally. Shot cheap, sold loud, and executed with absolute conviction, it didn't just succeed as a film, it succeeded as an experience. William Castle turned cinemas into electric circuses, audiences into participants, and Vincent Price into the ringmaster of your own personal nightmare. The creature was rubber, the science was nonsense, the buzzers were crude, but the screams, those were real. From a spine-crawling parasite to the birth of immersive horror, from fake fainting victims to a legacy that still electrifies, the Tingler proved that you don't need realism to create terror. You just need imagination, showmanship, and the courage to wire a few seats. So which fact about the Tingler shocked you the most? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more forgotten gimmicks, wild stunts, and the films that turned moviegoing into madness, hit that subscribe button, because sometimes the best scares don't stay on screen, sometimes they crawl right into your seat.